Hi, I just wanted to do a random live stream. Let's see if I can just chat with some viewers here. Yeah, so the past week we've seen the true face of Great Britain, or really the true face of all Western nations. We've seen states that are so tied up in their globalist plots that they have completely lost the plot. They've forgotten what to do about their own people. They're basically treating their own citizens, in Great Britain, but also in France or Germany, as second-rate citizens. It's truly disgusting. So I want to do a little live stream. If you have some questions for me, just go ahead. This is just a casual little bit. I just got started. I'll probably do this for an hour or so, or up to an hour. And so we see the true face of Western nations. The riots in Britain with Southport and wherever it was, Birmingham, Plymouth. I've been tracking the news, right? So that's why I know something about it. I don't live in the UK, of course. But you can get to know so much about what goes on by following Twitter, X, and I actually saw live streams of Muslim people live streaming their own attacks on people in their cars, chasing white people in the streets with machetes and so on. You can see this live. So they want to ban that. There was an article on Spiked by Brendan O'Neill explaining this also, that the British elites, what you call them, the establishment, they are so used to having complete, total control over the narrative. Even in the age of social media, because they used to control social media as well. Twitter used to be a CIA asset, right? Now there's more free speech, more truthful speech also on Twitter, right? And that's a good thing. And it counters, like TikTok live streams, my videos, my kind of videos and videos others are making on TikTok, and Twitter X, these platforms really are countering the big narratives of our former national overlords, Right. So, the two-tier justice system is so obvious now. Everybody around the world could see that it is true, and it's a bit amusing for us to hear that your leaders in the UK are denying that this is so. We judge people without fear or fervor or favor, or that's what your prime minister said. And then we turn on TikTok live streams and we see, on one live stream I see police beating up white people, and on the next live stream I see hundreds of bearded men in hoodies and balaclavas wearing machetes and whatever and knives, and there's no police in sight. So yeah, it's very obvious there's two-tier policing going on. Whoever denies that must be working for the government. So someone says you're worried that TikTok will be banned or limited. What are the best alternatives? Well, we go to the next platform. There's Clapper app or whatever. They can't ban the whole internet unless they build a sort of firewall around their entire nation, like Iran and China have done. Maybe that's what they're going to do. They're going to ban Twitter, X, and TikTok, and what else? You have to ban everything then, all social media. And then what, WhatsApp? You're going to monitor your WhatsApp groups? I don't think you can do that anymore. The people in this establishment who are so used to write the narratives, tell people what to believe, they're going to have to accept that they're going to lose this power. They will respond, of course, with extreme censorship. They're jailing people for tweeting inaccurate information. Meaning information that is true, but it goes against the narrative of the establishment. It's also strange, All right. Seating as African and tell us your opinion. I don't know what you mean about that. Yeah, they're so blatant they can't even hide. What do I think the goal is? Well, the British establishment, what's his name? Keir Starmer, right? Your prime minister. He's part of a ruling class whose concerns are global. So they are more concerned with getting Muslims to side with the West so they can then use Muslims as soldiers to fight Russia, for example, or to fight China. And the same with the Hindus. They also need to pander to the Hindus to get the Hindus on our side to fight Russia and China. It's really the big plot, the big game is about the former UK empire, basically the Anglo-American empire, using NATO and getting Muslims on board, getting the Hindus on board, and getting the Africans on board to fight the big enemy, the enigma, China, right? And so that's the problem. Nobody is afraid of Muslims, but we don't like your lack of quality, you know, and I'm blocking you for these questions. It's so childish. Don't say things like that. Nobody cares about Muslims. I just don't want to live with them, you know. So the end goal, I was talking about, hey, hello, Connor. The end goal is the Western globalists want to rule the world, but China won't let them. So, of course, I can speak Dutch because I'm Dutch, but not on this channel. This is my English channel, right? It might confuse people. Can Europe be saved? Yeah, well, that's what I always talk about in my videos. What can we do? The way I see it, you have this globalist class. They're lackeys in academia, media, and politics, and in finance perhaps as well. On one hand, basically the Islamo-communists on one hand, and on the other hand, we have basically the ethno-nationalists of Europe, European type people who want to have their own country and basically, you know, craft our own future the way we want it. The solution is basically nationalism. We need to get this globalist system to break it apart, right? And then split it back up into more manageable regional powers, regional empires, our own nation states again, so that we don't have to be forced to live with people who hate us, people who don't like us, people who don't want to be around us, you know. Be done with all that, you know. Why should you want to live in a place like London where only 37% of the population is nowadays native white British, you know? Anybody who can afford to get out of there will get out of there, right? You know, it's just so strange. Wow, I see a lot of comments flowing by. So how do you justify the fact that 50 countries want to live on the expense of the others? It doesn't need to be justified because it isn't so. You're lying, see? That's the problem with you people. You know, you don't know how to be productive, and that's your own problem. It's basically, the way I see it, you have the adults who are productive and you have a bunch of children whining about it. You know, it's not our problem. So capitalism is a conspiracy that requires perpetual blah, blah, blah of the money supply. Yeah, everything is a conspiracy, you know. So I don't even like this split between capitalism versus socialism as though those are your only two options. There's always other options that we just don't talk about because it's too difficult, right? So for example, you can have the autarkic life, you can have your own, if you have land to live on that is, you know, large enough for you to feed a family on, then you don't need either. You don't need capitalism, you don't need socialism, but you do need to defend it somehow, right? Nobody in Europe wants to fight the Russians. I mean, what are we fighting for? If you look at our countries now, Germany, France, UK, what are we fighting for? We're fighting for LGBT, we're fighting for extreme censorship. You're going to get arrested for retweeting something that the British establishment doesn't like, you know? They're going to jail you for 2 years for what? For gesticulating at the police or something, right? And you want to fight for that? Nobody's going to do that. I think in the Netherlands, for example, just to mention something, barely 10% of the men are willing to fight for their country anymore. And that's only because most of them are still these basic right-wingers who still think that they have a nation, but they don't. If people would realize that you don't have a country anymore, you don't have a culture, you don't have a people anymore, then what are you fighting for? Right? In Second World War, it was very clear what the Germans were fighting for. They were fighting for their nation, their future, their people. They felt like they were ascending and achieving something, and this isn't so anymore. You know, I heard that today or yesterday, Ukrainian soldiers crossed the border to Russia and they actually killed civilians there. Women and children included, pregnant women were shot. I don't support that at all. That's just a war crime to me. what Ukraine is doing with the help and the support of NATO, these are just war crimes. How can I support that? I don't support that war against Russia at all. It's insane. You know, Kim.com mentioned this also on Twitter, is that if Germany and Russia would work together, they would be more powerful than this whole NATO bloc. And that's another threat that they, of course, want to stop. They're trying to deindustrialize Germany for that purpose, you know. Yeah, great content. You agree with the message. Yeah, thank you very much. You can follow me on Twitter, X, at JohannesMKX, for example, or you get my newsletter at jmk.info. Do you think the AfD would reduce migration in Germany? I think AfD is somewhat of a controlled opposition party, but on the other hand, you know, what is happening to Germany is simply industrial collapse. And they think they can fix that with immigration. I don't think so. There's now 1 million Syrian people living in Germany. Half of them live off welfare. Okay, that's not going to last. You know, at some point, Germany won't be able to afford welfare to anyone, even their own. Right? They're going to have to starve off their elderly. You're going to see mass starvations, or maybe that's what the next Jibby Jab program is going to be about killing off the elderly. Right? No, I don't see. I don't think the AfD will stop immigration because there are other powers like the USA who won't allow that. They're just trying to destroy Germany with migration, trying to destroy the more competent, more freedom-loving people. Although I have to say, on my visits to Germany, it's very obvious that a lot of Germans are so stubborn-minded. They're not interested in anything like freedom anymore. They're just machines at this point, you know. That's a big problem with all Europeans, is that we feel that the end days are near, right? And lots of Europeans are giving up. They don't have any kind of spark anymore, no fire in their hearts. Their eyes grow dull, and you see that they're not even thinking about what to do. They're just sitting in front of their TV at night and crying or something, you know. Yeah, maybe capitalism leads to communism, yeah. In some way, I suppose, if you have a wealthy society, you can afford more people on welfare, and then you become more communistic. Maybe that's how it goes, yeah. Yeah, right. The British Empire forces Ireland to take in migrants. Same with the EU, it forces everyone to take in migrants. It's a global plot. Because they, like I said, they need the Muslims and the Hindus on their side to go to war with Russia and China, right? Right, Russia is fighting for its own national defenses, but then again, Putin is also a kind of globalist. He's just a different kind of globalist. Do you think that the Rassemblement National of France would reduce migration? Yeah, same answer like with the AfD in Germany. I don't think they can do it. If they win total power, if they wanted to do something about migration, they're going to have to accept that the economy will have to collapse in the process. That's how I think it will be done. In the end, either deliberately or through sheer mismanagement, the economies of these big nations in Europe will have to collapse, Germany, France, UK, and they will go bankrupt. They will start printing money like crazy. The euro will become worthless. And you get a Weimar period in which new strongmen will have the opportunity to seize power. But then, of course, many secret services, both those of China and of the US, will try to influence that as well. I don't know if is Germany too often on the wrong side of history. I think Germany used to be caught in between the British Empire and the Russian Empire, and to some extent also the French Empire. And the one time that Germany decided to stand up and try to beat these outside threats, right, they were absolutely destroyed by the end of World War II, of course. I don't think they did anything wrong. Yeah, things are going to get a lot worse. I think the future for the sort of right-wing, like if you are like a sort of European who wants Europe to be European, we're looking at guerrilla war against the globalists. And this may be something you don't expect. It's not going to be national armies fighting each other. The national armies will fight Russia, but then at the same time in Europe, there's going to be a guerrilla war of, basically commoners and peasants rising up against their national communist overlords and their globalist overlords, right, to try to overthrow that. And I think we have an opportunity, a historic opportunity to right some wrongs, to get back at, at least 50, 60 years of oppression, really, since the end of the Second World War. So I've been reading these books like The Forest Passage by Ernst Jünger, and also Guerrilla Warfare by Che Guevara. Now, I know Che Guevara is like a communist, but he wrote a sort of manual on how to do guerrilla warfare, and it can still be done. Basically, you need to hide in the countryside. But in our modern time, things will be so much more complicated. They will trace your cell phones. So you got to fix the problem of how do we prevent being traced with cell phones? You got to maybe live offline, like have no cell phones and use, I don't know, pigeons or something to communicate with the resistance. But you're going to have to be your OPSEC, your operational security is going to be, you're going to have to train people to figure out, okay, how to use your cell phone in this kind of guerrilla warfare and so on. How to leave no trace on the internet. It's going to be quite difficult to figure this out. But I think you can use more primitive tools like, I don't know, pigeons, but maybe also walkie-talkies or something, or your other kinds of radio equipment that can be encrypted, and you would communicate like that. Yeah, I seriously think that's what's going to be necessary at some point there. All right, in Finland, your National Traditionalist Party lost its party status. Yeah, you can't fight them in the political arena because the media will shame you, and the media will paint you as evil anyway. They will. Nowadays, mainstream media, I've already seen it, mainstream media will generate AI fake pictures of protests claiming that you did something. Like last night, apparently, there were 100 far-right protests all over Great Britain. That never happened, but they show you pictures that are completely fake, and some of them are AI manipulated at least. So you can't win them in the media arena. These people are absolute experts in controlling the narrative and fooling people into believing that this or that happened. They're not at all used to things like TikTok and Twitter now being reasonably on the side of the people. But for how long, right? For how long? Maybe they will close off the internet if they have to, right? They're already saying that children in high schools aren't allowed to have cell phones anymore. Why not? Why not? Because they're going to teach them something that they don't want on record? Right. All right. Do you think Putin will use tactical nukes if cornered? I think, I read a book by Akio Nakatani, and it may sound a bit conspirational, but I don't believe nuclear weapons are real. Like the idea in Hollywood movies where you have one rocket with one big bomb attached to it and you blow up all of Paris or all of New York City, that doesn't exist. And you can tell what is or isn't real is that Russia has allegedly placed some of its nukes in Belarus, and the NATO powers want to put their rockets somewhere in eastern Germany. And so you see that the actual range of these rockets, they don't fly around the world. So that's one. Secondly, the warhead they carry is not powerful enough to blow up cities. These are not city killers. The nuclear weapons that I think really exist are basically conventional rockets that can reach Moscow from Berlin. Basically, Berlin to Moscow is about the range of these rockets. And these bombs, although they have megatons of explosive power, the nuclear aspect of it is they probably will sprinkle uranium into them. So it's going to be a dirty bomb. So I think the most realistic scenario of nuclear warfare is you're going to fire dirty bombs from Berlin to Moscow, about that range or so, right? And it will be polluting. People will get sick. There will be some radiation, but the idea that they're going to blow up Moscow, forget about it. That's not going to happen. And vice versa, the Russians are not going to blow up London or Amsterdam. Sadly, I wish it were possible to blow up, Paris and London, because, our people don't even live there anymore. So what the hell do we care about these cities? Why are we still working for an economy to maintain these cities if you know that, for example, 80% of national taxes are spent on the big cities, because that's where they have all the culture going on, right? And the museums and so on, right? So they spend it all there, and then the rest of the country, the rural and the suburban parts, they get nothing in terms of tax money. Why are we still doing this? Why is a majority of people living in the Netherlands or in Paris or in France or in Germany, why are we paying taxes to maintain some artsy-fartsy degenerate scene in the capitals, and we never really see the returns of all this of all the taxation anyway? It's such an incredible waste. Okay, I see a lot of comments blasting past there. I can't answer all of them, so I'll have to skip a few or something. Yeah, anti-racist is code for anti-white. Yeah, that's very obvious, yeah. What do you think really for Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, basically Eastern Europe? Well, Bulgaria recently banned, I think it was today, they banned the LGBT curriculum in the schools. So Bulgaria, Hungary, and no, not Poland, because Poland was pressured by the USA to do it, not to do it. But you see that these Eastern European countries, because of their language, the Slavic language is more similar to Russian, right? Slavic languages like Bulgarian is much more similar to Russian than to German, or for example. So Eastern Europeans, I think culturally, psychologically, they feel more affinity to the Russians anyway, culture-wise. Why would they want to support NATO and the Americans and their LGBT nonsense and their absolutely crazy Kamala Harris? Why would you want to be? Why would you want to be in support of that? I'm not even in support of that. And I'm from Western Europe. I grew up in basically an anti-white, self-hating country that hates men, that blames men for everything. Like, there is a lot of people in Western Europe, of course, who don't like any of this. It's just that the majority of the sheeple seem to just be going along with it, Could you shed some light on how Europe and the West can leave Africa alone so that their immigrants can go back home? You need to become more productive. It's basically a you problem. I've said that before. What Africa needs is investors, entrepreneurs, technologists, inventors, smart people, right? If you don't have them, then that's the reason why everybody else, China, for example, is ripping you dry. It's a bit strange that Africans always talk about European colonialism while they are being colonized by the Russians and the Chinese. It's really funny. Like, can't you see what is being done? What do you think really for the Balkans, Bulgaria? Yeah, I just answered the question. Britain's effed up, yeah. How many kids should white Europeans have? It's basically a quality issue, I think the world is overpopulated, and it would have been normal for Europeans now to have 1 or 2 kids. We shrink our population, our elderly, the boomer generation dies off, creating room, creating space again, so that we can then move our young out into the countryside again. We can start farming again, right? Meaning having family farms again instead of these big conglomerates. That way, I think that would have been the traditionalist future. But it's being thwarted by the globalists who don't want that to happen. The globalists, they see Europe as an infrastructure, and they don't care who lives there as long as they're getting their money from their Netflix and their train subscriptions, whatever, right? And so they move in all the migrants they want, but the birth rates in Africa are also in decline, much more rapidly than expected. The birth rates in India have leveled off at around 2 per woman, so that's stabilized, but it's dropping. China has only 1.2 children per woman, right? And Africans, Central Africans, who have been having a lot of children, they're reaching their limits also a lot quicker than expected. So what I think is going to happen is the West is simply going to run out of migrants. And when the stream of migrants ends, you have no more cheaper labor. There's a limit to how cheap your labor can be. right? Because you still need to feed a slave, and if you can't feed your slave, he dies, right? So you can't go, there's a limit to how cheap labor can be. And then it just ends there. The economies of the West are looking at a sort of Weimar period of hyperinflation, and then a total degenerate cultural collapse. And then, of course, the stronger, healthier elements of our societies have an opportunity to seize that moment and put themselves in charge again and create a completely new future. A future where we feel we are ascending again, where we are, I see a lot of comments blasting past now. I can't possibly answer them, but my point is, I think the resistance, the insurgency of the West is going to have to tackle this problem. We need to somehow get our ruling classes to surrender power, whichever way, easy way or hard way, but they need to surrender their power so that the healthier, stronger elements within our communities can survive and thrive again. Right? So this isn't even an issue of left versus right or capitalism versus socialism. It's an issue of surviving and thriving or going extinct. Right? And I think we will find a way. There's going to be that opportunity this century. If I have to give you an estimate, it will be somewhere between 2030 and 2050 AD or so, where we have this struggle where we will be able to overthrow our present ruling classes, the ones who control the narrative, who tell us what to believe. We depose them somehow, right? And then we return our people to the land, to the countryside, where the air is fresh again, right? And we can start having families of our own again, our own national cultures. And what about the immigrants who have already arrived here? Well, they're stuck in the big cities, see? And those big cities will end up becoming uninhabitable prisons almost. It is imperative that our people, say the native indigenous Europeans, that we seize the countryside, we seize the fertile soil where we can grow food. If you don't have the food production under your control, you become a slave in your own country. You have to have the food production on your side, right? All right, if you want to subscribe to my newsletter, you can go to jmk.info. I send out a newsletter almost every day now, once a day, because I produce these videos for TikTok, my short speeches every day, one speech a day, and you can also receive that in your email box if you care about it. Yeah, I do have sort of an email address. You can send me at mail@jmk.info. It should arrive. Yeah, you're surprised that Europe allowed that many refugees in. It wasn't thought through. It's simply demand driven, like the globalist overlords of the West. They have their big corporations, right? They're just looking at the bottom line. How much money is coming in? Oh, we need more migrants. We need more Netflix subscribers. We need more Starbucks consumers. And so they bring more people in. But you have a problem here because at the same time, while you're doing this, although the economy as a whole appears to be growing by 2% per year or so, the income per capita in the West is relatively going down. Relatively meaning inflation is speeding up, but your salaries are not keeping up pace with the inflation. And so your buying power is going down significantly, right? And as a result of that, you reach a point where people will want to exit this economic system. They will no longer want to be a part of it because they realize that they are going to be better off living off the grid or cutting loose or going to Siberia or to the subarctics or wherever, or moving out into the countryside. To give you an example of what's going on in the Netherlands, there's a whole trend of young people in their 20s deciding that they are never going to own a home because they can't afford a house. And so they move into vans and they do van life or even car camping, right? And then they travel around Europe, and then what happens? They discover that there are entire villages in Europe, in Spain and France, that are completely abandoned, uninhabited. You can buy a whole village in Spain for 600,000 euros, which is about the price of a bit of a luxury home in the Netherlands, right? So these young people, they're thinking to themselves, like, why would I spend 40, 50 years of my life working for a mortgage and to own a small house in the Netherlands if I can just move out into the French countryside now and scoop up a huge big farmhouse for like 100,000 euros, right? A fixer-upper, of course. But you see that people are trying to escape. Literally, there are people who feel so panicked, basically, about the economic situation. They're looking for ways out. They don't want to be a part of this, you know, what do you call it? Like prison. It's a prison system where you are, you know, told what to do, and if you don't do your job, they throw you into the hole, right? They throw you into a solitary confinement or something, right? Right. Yeah, you appreciate me. Well, thank you for listening, right? Could I recommend some good philosophers? Yeah, Ernst Jünger, Martin Heidegger. Martin Heidegger is very difficult to read. It's very academic. But Ernst Jünger and the poems of Friedrich Hölderlin. Schopenhauer is kind of all right. I like Schopenhauer. I don't think Trump has controlled opposition, but his friends are all Zionists. So if you vote Trump, it's going to be an Israel first presidency. Although I hope that Trump starts to market himself a bit more to white people and actually take some of their concerns, you know, seriously. All right. I see a lot of comments, so I can't possibly answer everything, so I'll just gonna have to skip a few again. Hold on. All right. Do you think some? Oh, there was a question. Where is it? Do you think some big sickness will come, like zombies versus the people or something, to reduce the population? Well, the elderly, yeah. So in Europe, we have an old, unproductive baby boomer cast. Like, we have more people over age 50 than under age 50, right? And so I think that's economically, they will want to get rid of those and then replace them with more migrants. Yeah, it's going to be a pandemic would be the best way to do that, right? Am I Irish? No, I'm Dutch, but I've been speaking in English for a very long time, although my accent must sound a bit weird. Working on getting out as a poor single woman under 30 in Dublin. Yeah, see, this is what I'm talking about. There, you can find it on TikTok. You see all these people, even young single women, deciding they're better off living in a van or something, or living in a wagon pulled by horses. I've seen people do that. And I think there's just too many people realizing, you know, I'm not going to work my whole life for $400,000 or $500,000 or so to buy a house, or euros to buy a house in the Netherlands or Ireland. I think in Ireland, the average housing price is like 300, well, close to 400,000 euros. You spend the rest of your life working for that. Is that really worth it while your nation is being destroyed, basically? You know, by the time you pay off your mortgage, your whole country is unrecognizable. Do you really want to be a part of this? You know? To you Swedes, it's time to move to the north if you want to distance yourself from the bullshit, yeah. So, if where in Europe does everybody live? There's a real genuine cutoff around where Denmark starts in Northern Europe. It's about at the height of Scotland, I presume. Anything north of basically Denmark and Scotland becomes sparsely populated. And if you are really tired of the rat race and the economic life in the big cities of Central Europe or so, or Western Europe, you might consider just going further north. I think that's a good idea anyway. Housing and land are still available, so much more cheap, but you have to accept snow then. Do you enjoy the snow? I personally wouldn't mind living in the snow 9 months a year, but that's all right, you know. All right. Respect from Ireland, right? Right. Kamala is not even a real person, yeah. She is so fake. she's not intelligent, but she is just very, how do you call it? You don't have to be smart to be ruthless, right? Hello from Scotland, right? You want to create a master group of red hair and blue-eyed people, okay? Very interesting, okay? Yeah, my speech is almost perfect, right? All right, I see a lot of questions from people. Let's see if I can keep up with you. Greetings from Australia, all right? Can I recommend some kind of active, political club? No, actually I don't. I think most of it is controlled opposition in the West anyway. What to do? I think what we're looking at in the next 20 years or so is like I was talking about, a guerrilla warfare of ethno-nationalistic Westerners against the Islamo-communists. That's how I see it. Greetings from Norway. People all over the world are watching this. Thank you very much. I'll keep speaking a little bit more. So I was talking earlier about what happened in Britain recently, the Great Britain, right? You have the riots in Southport and wherever, because there were some girls who had been murdered by the son of immigrant parents. And it really, it disclosed you. It really disclosed the truth about the establishment. The political ruling classes, they are so used to telling you what to believe through their media, because they control the media. It's not organic. Journalists don't write the news. They write what they're told to write by their bosses. It's fake. The news isn't real. You know this by now. But they're so used to making you believe that there were like right-wing protests, even though there are no right-wing protests anywhere in Europe. This doesn't exist, right? There is no far-right threat in Europe, but they paint that threat so that they can then, right? They create the problem so they can pretend to be the solution. And so that's how they managed to stay in power for so long. But now social media, the sort of videos I make, Twitter and so on, the truth does come out here and there. People are able to share it, because I think a lot of normies, they watch the news on TV, right? Old-fashioned TV. And they can hear and see that it's always the same message, it's always the same setup, and people are starting to question it. And this is very dangerous for the power people, right? They don't want people to know that they've been conning you, lying to you all the time. Since the day you were born, everybody's always lied to you. Everybody in politics and media has always been lying to you. So we want to overcome this and overthrow this system, because what I think is going on is that this system that we are living through is not tenable. It will not be maintained. It must come to some kind of an end. And I'm predicting a sort of Weimar-esque, Weimar-type economic crash, where the euro and the dollar will lose incredible value, right? A loaf of bread will end up costing $1 billion. That's what happened with the Deutschmark in Germany in the 1920s, right? The prices of things, you won't be able to afford food at some point. And you're going to have to trade your chickens or your children to eat, right? In that moment, however, you have an opportunity for people who care to get rid of these, twisted ruling classes and replace them with new leadership that actually does care about the people. They care about their own people. That's usually my position. Like, if I position myself politically, I'm basically a middle-class person siding with the working classes, but against the globalists and their foreign clientele. I call it the Islamo-communists, who I think are our enemy. Howdy from Texas. Yeah, everybody's in trouble, right? Von der Leyen is not good for Europe. Absolutely not. Right? What are my thoughts on the 2030 agenda? Well, it's an agenda. They tell you they want diversity, inclusion, whatever these goals are, but that doesn't mean people are going to go along with it. And I think a good degree of this is basically just deceit. They're just deceiving you into thinking that they're doing this. like for example, go green, and they say that by 2030 in Europe, you're not allowed to buy a gas-powered car anymore. You have to drive an electric vehicle. But that's not really feasible because the charging points are still too slow. The car batteries, they have a smaller radius, a range. You can only drive for like 200 or 300 miles. It's not enough. That would actually damage the economy to the point where the economy stops working. You're going to have to keep driving gas cars for quite some time. You know, things like that. They're trying to force their ideologies onto you without testing whether or not it works, because in many cases it doesn't even work. For example, the solar panels, you can invest in solar panels. Solar panels are great if you want to go car camping or living in a van for a year, you have electricity with you. But to put these panels on your roof, all of a sudden you'll discover that they have like, you need to use them for 20 years to make back the money you invested, but they die by age 15 basically. So they don't last long enough to be useful. It becomes a cost. All these green inventions become a cost, and then you're stuck with basically the damage, right? You've done too much damage. You've destroyed your economy, right? Greetings from Australia, greetings from New Zealand. Yeah, this is exciting. I like it when people from all over the world are tuning in to listen. So I can hopefully find the words and reach some people out there. Maybe I'll summarize it one more time. We are facing globalists who are absolutely ruining our people and our nations and our culture. They don't care. They're absolute psychopaths. They only look at the bottom line, the money. That's all they care about, the money, right? And then there's us, real people who want to live. We don't just want to survive, we want to thrive. But we want to thrive in a country that resembles something of ourselves, so that we go outside, we meet people who look like us, right? You know, people who speak our language. And I think too much diversity, if it's more than 20% or so, which is the case in most Western nations nowadays anyway, it starts to become a big problem. You can no longer relate to people. You avoid certain neighborhoods, or you never even go there, right? How often do you meet your Muslim friends at the local English or Irish pub? You don't meet them there. You live separate. You live in separate worlds anyway. Then why do you live in the same city? Why don't you just have, hey, this is an idea, your own countries? How about that? How about we have our own countries? You know, it's not such a strange idea at all. And what I think is going to happen is that the big cities are not going to survive. And eventually people may be forced to move out into rural areas, suburban, but mostly closer to nature. And then there's another idea. Where can you go? You know, the subarctic region in the northern hemisphere, that's the region below the polar circle. You have these massive woodlands in northwestern Eurasia. That's part of Scandinavia, Finland, northwestern Russia, Siberia, Alaska, right? Northern Canada and so on. You have these massive woodlands where almost nobody lives there. And if you could somehow, with modern technology, terraform these places, make these places more habitable, you might start completely new nations there. You could be the founder of your own nations if you have the balls to just go out and do it. Get some billionaire friend. You have a friend who is a billionaire, right? Get them to fund this so you can move a bunch of people out, 50,000 people, or 500,000 people, or maybe just start with 1,000, right? And you go out there and you start building wooden housing, you start building your roads there, you have your cattle, because I think you're going to have to use pastoralism in the north to survive. You can have milk and meat, right? And yogurt and so on. And you'll grow some. Agriculture is more difficult in the cold, but pastoralism will do. You just live off dairy foods, right? This isn't a big deal. But you can imagine it, right? The idea itself, I find it very exciting that you might actually start over. We don't have to be stuck in places like New York City or Detroit or, you know, the suburbs of Paris or so, or wherever you are stuck at. We don't have to be there forever. This is not how it works. Say that Kamala Harris becomes the new president of the United States and she installs her crazy communist people, right, with the Obama and so on and whoever, right? And they start doing really weird shit to your society. Why would you stay a part of it? You don't have to be a part of it. So what are your options? Well, you can fight back as a sort of guerrilla insurgency. That's one option, a counter-revolution. Or the other option is you leave, but then the only option to leave too would be the subarctic. I think that is still a viable option to move there. You could start over, like Hyperborea, if you know what that means, right? Yeah, there's a lot of comments in this section. I can't possibly respond to all of them, but you know. Yeah, I'm quite optimistic, yeah, because I believe we can do it. I believe in ourselves. We have the skill, the knowledge, the technology. We basically have everything we need to reboot ourselves, to start somewhere over, you know? Yeah, I like yogurt. No, I don't think my ideas are crazy. I'm crazy, but my ideas are solid. We really need to think about, you know, where to go next, you know? Technically, we have all the money we need in our society. I bet you could get some Bitcoin bros together, chip in a couple of million to start a nation in the subarctic. I think they would do it, you know? It's not going to be impossible, all right? If you find the right inspiration, the right spark in you to go and do something like that, you can do it. There's a lot of shit posting going on. Okay, yeah, there's too many people watching now. Normally I don't have 200 viewers or so, but I'll see what's going on, right? All right, let's see if I mayonnaise. Yeah, as a Dutch person, we actually eat fries with mayonnaise. No, not with ketchup, but that's okay. All right, so is it getting out of hand? All right. All right. You bring 50 people. All right. All right, let me get back to, yeah, I'm from the Netherlands, I'm Dutch, and I talk about what goes on in the Western world. Basically, I try to use my little speeches that I do every day to support my own people. And what's wrong with that, you know? Apparently, a lot of people hate me for it because they block, ban, and report me, so I lose my accounts reasonably often, right? All right. I think this kind of question, like, are you racist or not? It's basically a nonsense question because the people who ask it are also racist, you know? I'm from the Netherlands, right? So I've lived through this transformation. In the 1990s, it started to become very obvious. We were getting a lot of Muslim migrants, and then Africans, and then more, and then Afghans, and so on. I've lived through this transformation, and it was deeply, deeply negative. Why would I want this? I could see that the native working classes were basically made second-rate citizens, and they were being replaced with migrants because they were cheaper and they settled for less, right? Because the natives expected a certain life, the life that their parents had built up. They were expected to be able to have that minimum. And then the migrants come in and they accept a life that is far worse than that. So the idea of equality is also quite nonsensical. Migrants coming to the West will not have an equal life. They will have it worse than what the natives have there, right? Because that's the reason why there's immigration. The reason there's immigration is to try to lower the costs of labor in the West. But by doing so, you also lower the quality of the people coming in. You lower the life expectations, right? It becomes an untenable situation where at some point the natives are no longer motivated to work for a life that they think is not worth living for, right? And then you have too many migrants coming in who don't bring the skill anymore, right? They don't have the same education. And so you get a situation like in Germany where half of the migrants are on welfare. Germany can't afford that. How much longer do you think Germany can afford all their welfare payouts? Maybe 5 more years and then they have to declare bankruptcy, and then what, you know? I don't get it, you know? The Netherlands has enough roads, we don't need any more. Yeah, states can go bankrupt. Of course, states can go bankrupt. They can print all the money they want, but at some point, people will not be able to buy food anymore. And then the people start starving, go bankrupt. Right, so oh shit. Hold on. Too much. Poland does it better, really. How do we get out of this mess? Yeah. There's a book called The Forest Passage by Ernst Jünger, a German author. His book was translated into English, right? The Forest Passage. And that's the best book I've ever read about what to do next. It's about setting up your rebellion, be a rebel basically, and join the guerrillas. And the guerrilla will attack infrastructure. Basically, we're going to sabotage globalism to expedite the collapse of the global financial system. It sounds very extreme. I'll probably go to jail for saying things like this, but I'll say it anyway, you know. Oh, I get all sorts of presents here. Thank you very much. Right. I would visit Oranje. I would like to visit Oranje. I would like to visit South Africa, right? You know, if you look at what they were like in Rhodesia, that means ancient Zimbabwe. Colonial Zimbabwe was called Rhodesia, and then you have South Africa, yeah. Those people are tough, man. They are descendants of Dutch people. The Afrikaners are mostly descendants of Dutch and some French also, but I noticed a really big difference between Dutch people and Afrikaner people. The Afrikaners are much stronger people, like physically, but also verbally. They're less afraid of death, for example. All right. You can tell that they fought for something. Whereas the Dutch people nowadays, Dutchmen, they don't want to fight for their country anymore. They don't think it's worth it, you know. All right, yeah. All right. No, I'm not afraid of death. The whole point here in the Western world, what's the story of Christ really about? Well, I won't go into the religion so deeply, but I'll just explain that the whole story of Christ is about doing what you believe is right, take all the ridicule, right, the social death. Basically, people will ostracize you, and then they kill you, but you do it anyway, right? Basically, you overcome the fear of death, and then death itself. It's called the ascent, the ascension. That's what the whole Christian religion is about. It's about just stop being afraid, because think about it, every decision you make in life leads to your death. So then why not make every decision exactly the decision that you wanted to make, and don't shy away from anything. You know, imagine yourself in a position where you're afraid, you're insecure, you don't know what to do, and you feel like maybe I should just walk away, run out, and then what if you don't? What if you just stand up for yourself, right, and make a name for yourself? And that's what it's all about. Overcome the fear of death and make every decision exactly what you wanted it to be. I think that is also a very masculine thing to do, all right? Yeah, don't be afraid of doing what you feel is the right thing to do, even if you're going to lose money, or if you're going to lose the promotion, or you're going to lose friends. You're also going to win other things, of course. You're going to get access, new doors will open for you that you didn't expect even to be there, right? It's the first time you joined, you're learning so much, you feel inspired, yeah. I'm going to keep trying to do that through my words and my videos. I want to inspire our people, you know, rise up against injustice, you know. You can hear Heidegger, yeah. Martin Heidegger is a German philosopher who who touches also on this point of overcoming the fear of death. And Ernst Jünger also. All right. I saw, yeah. But sadly, many average people are terribly afraid of even the ordinary flu nowadays, right? And that's a bit sad. You can tell. This is how I lost respect for old people. I used to think that elderly people are older than I, right? 50s in the 60s and 70s and so on. I thought they had experience. They knew about life. And then to see them be terribly afraid of something like the flu, I could no longer respect them, because they apparently, a lot of people don't really live life well. And you don't have to be that way. You can make sure that by the time you get to age 70 or so, that you've done everything you wanted to do, right? And you can look back on a life of, well, if not achievement, at least you have, no regrets. And I think that's quite important, right? The old Germanic peoples used to believe in something like reincarnation, but they believed that if you died fighting for something, you would come back healthy. Whereas if you lived an old life because you didn't do anything, then you would come back and live another miserable life. So, so the warriors basically, they believed that warriors were rewarded for their courage. And I think that's also a great point. All right, let me see. All right, I've been speaking for almost an hour, but I see people are still interested. I'm going to try to keep talking for a little bit longer. No, old people don't all have experience and knowledge. No, they certainly don't. Right. Yeah, so yeah, we're afraid of the future, right? So what's it going to be like? And that's why, in this life, we're going to make some tough decisions and overthrow our manipulative media elites, right? And these strange, what would you call them really? Who are really in charge? These priests of progress or something, right? They're no good people. Come to Utah. Yeah, so the British police, man, they do two-tier policing and then they deny that they do so. And then at the same time, they can't deny it because there's like other people, like non-British people living in Britain committing crimes, and now they are forced to actually go and arrest those to prove that they're not doing two-tier policing. It's so weird. Why won't they just be normal? Yeah, we need to transcend from all the different concepts. Yeah, that's a very good point, Jared. The name of the book I was talking about is The Forest Passage. I don't know if I wish I could type it in somewhere, but I don't know how to do that here. Comment. Oh, here we go. So I'll just type it in. The Forest Passage by... This is the best book I've ever found so far on starting a rebellion and basically knowing what to do. The Forest Passage by Ernst Jünger. If you can find this kind of book, you will. It contains a whole program, like you know exactly what to do by the end of the book. It's not a big book. It's like 200 pages or less. Yeah, you can work through that. Now, do you believe in Freemasons? No, Freemasonry is actually, what was it? It was a sort of Protestant outfit that at first did not include Catholics. I think they were sort of trying to prevent Catholicism from succeeding at the counter-revolution. Anyway, that's a bit complicated. Right, among the Vikings, you were a pariah or an outcast if you were an old warrior, right? Because you should have died younger. Right. No, I'm not going to marry a black woman. Come on. Yeah. What are your thoughts on civil war, martial law, new world order? Well, the globalists are going to respond with repression, extreme repression, to beat back everything that they perceive as a threat, especially their own people, because we're becoming more of an insurgency. Like the native, let's say white working classes losing their jobs, eventually they're gonna try to send those off to war against Russia to kill them off. And those who refuse to go to war, they become a big threat. They become a domestic threat, right? Because they are a real insurgency, right? They kind of manifested that with the January 6th thing. When Trump lost in 2020, they blamed him of being an insurgent, but that's what is going to happen anyway eventually. If you sell out your own people and try to replace them and then crack down on their freedoms, like I said, people will no longer want to be a part of this society. They will want to get out. Right? And the way to get out is you're not going to ask. You're going to have to use force to get out, right? No, I don't love Israel. The thing with the Israel-Gaza conflict is I don't take a side in it. I'm for Europe. I'm not for the Palestinians because I'm not one of them. I'm not for Israel. I'm not one of them. I am for Europe. It's very clear to me. I'm for the Western peoples, basically, our people. And, the Israeli leadership, they're very cunning and very powerful. They're like a mafia who have infiltrated the US and so on. And they want to just use your tax money so they can defeat Iran, or they can defeat the Arabs so they can take more territory. They want to create greater Israel. That's all fine and dandy, but I won't be a part of it. I will not support that. I'm going to fight for the Europeans in Europe. I've got something else to do. All right, I've been speaking for an hour, so I'm gonna log off now. I will do this again. I guess it works well on Friday evenings. Oh no, Thursday evening. So maybe next Thursday I'll come back. You can go to my newsletter at jmk.info, or you can also find me on Twitter at JohannesMKX, or also on Telegram at JohannesMK. If you go to those places, or you stay on my channel over here, and I have no intention of quitting speaking. I'm going to try to produce a short speech every day on TikTok here. So you'll see me pop up over here. Thank you very much. Thank you for watching. And by the way, I will put this video, I will upload it later to my YouTube channel, which is at The Great Johannes. So you might see it there as well. All right, have a nice evening.